Fellow reef keepers, if you're hoping to add more flow to your aquarium, you can go and add a whole bunch more of these, or you can build a Carlson Surge Device. And stick around, because in this video, I'm going to show you how I'm building and installing a Carlson Surge Device on my 4,000 litre, 12 foot long Palau Reef aquarium. Just to get started, I've thrown a couple of gyre wave makers on each side of this aquarium. And you can see it looks like there's a fair bit going on with the surface of the actual aquarium water. Until I do this. So that fish food goes straight down. Not that much flow is there really. That's right, so in this video I'm going to show you how to actually build a Carlson Surge Device. It's an old school technology that relies upon gravity to create an absolute insane amount of surging flow in your reef tank. And it's actually really simple to build. Is it a bucket? No, it's a Carlson Surge Device. And this old 5 gallon or 20 litre bucket was a Carlson Surge Device that I had installed actually over a very old reef tank back in the day. But I'm going to use it to illustrate how simple it is to actually build a Carlson Surge Device and how very little plumbing actually goes into it. So before we get started on this, what is a Carlson Surge Device? A Carlson Surge Device is an elevated body of water contained within a bucket or a barrel or a tank. It does not matter what it is, but it's elevated above and even above and adjacent to the actual display. That container of water is continuously fed a controlled amount of water from either the display or from the sump, from some form of either a DC controllable pump where you can actually control the amount of flow to it, or by installing a valve in line to actually have fine-tuned control over how much water goes into that reservoir. Once the actual container or the body of water reaches a certain height, a siphon is created from the design of the plumbing inside the actual container. That siphon then very quickly dumps the entire volume of the reservoir directly down into the actual display. Then the bucket or the barrel just keeps on filling up, and the whole process just continually cycles over and over and over again. There's only 2 pieces of plumbing that sit within inside the bucket and are threaded into actual bulkheads that in this case are actually located on the underside of the bucket, just because the bucket was located almost directly over the display. But you could just as easily go through the actual sides of the container if the bucket is sitting upwards and adjacent to the display. So inside your actual Carlson Surge Device is simply this. Basically a piece of plumbing which is the siphon. It actually has a siphon brake attached to it. And this is an emergency overflow standpipe, just like you'd have in your overflow of your aquarium. What we're going to do is actually get started building the plumbing for a Carlson Surge Device, which is going to be inside this, well, I think it's a 200 litre drum. What I need to do is replicate the siphon and replicate the overflow, emergency overflow. I've beefed up the size of the plumbing to be 50 mil rather than 25 mil, and that's to accommodate for the larger volume of water. I could do it in 25 mil, but the larger the size of the plumbing, the faster the discharge of the water will occur when that siphon's created, and hence the larger the surge that will be formed within the display. Being a fast discharge of water and a large surge, the surge won't last as long as if I was to use smaller plumbing like 25 mil. So just keep that in mind if you wish to have a long drawn out surge or more of a fast one coming through. I like fast surge, big water movement, big waves, lots of air, very, very quickly. Don't read into that the wrong way. You're going to need a variety of elbows. You're going to need some threaded end connectors, be they female or male. You need some pipe, some priming fluid, and some PVC pipe cement Don't use blue or green. For the life of me, I do not know why people use blue or green PVC pipe cement. It looks so ugly, it's so messy. Just get the clear stuff. Get the clear stuff, you wipe it away, job looks pretty. You're going to need some thread tape. You're going to need some bulkheads, 2 bulkheads. I've already installed one into the barrel 3/4 of the way up, which dictates the height that the barrel will fill to. And this is the part that will be for the siphon. And this one here I'll be using for my emergency overflow. You're going to need some form of tubing, which will be for your air brake or your suction brake, siphon brake, a siphon brake. That's what you call it. Righto, so that's the original siphon that I was using in the bucket. And you can see it's obviously a U shape. And this is what I'm going to build for my barrel. Now that doesn't look like a U shape, it's an L shape. But if you think about it, this is where the actual, this is all inside the barrel, and the actual, this female end connector will attach to a bulkhead fitting, which is located already there on the side of the barrel. So if you think about it, when that plumbing comes out and then goes down to the aquarium, that is actually a U shape. It's simply that this one here was situated directly over the aquarium, which is the reason why I wanted to come through the bottom of the bucket. Whereas in this case, I'm actually going to be placing this barrel way up the back there, and that's to the side. Therefore, I want to come out through the side of the barrel. You can see I've come across and then down, which is exactly the same as this. I did find this nifty piece of a T piece there, which is a 50 to 25 mil T, which I thought, oh, fabulous. That means I can actually just make a nice, neat job, pop in some 25 mil fittings, thread in this bush, which is a 25 down to 10 mil bush, I think, or 8 mil, and this it's a bit like a, almost like a John Guest style fitting. Thread that piece in there, and then I can use some of this 8 mil tubing to actually use for my siphon brake, and that'll go down and I'll zip tie it all the way down to here. And that is the actual siphon. It's really, really simple, and it's going to be fitted inside the barrel just onto the bulkhead, which I've already installed there. So what about the emergency overflow? Well, again, because of where the barrel is going to be situated up there, I don't want to come through the bottom of the barrel, so I'm actually going to drill a hole around this side of the barrel. There's a bit of a curve there, so I'm going to have to come in a bit flat. It'll be at the same height pretty much as where the siphon comes out. Because it's going to be at the same height, and I obviously don't want that, I want the water level, the emergency water level, to come up higher than the actual siphon. What I'll do after the bulkhead is I'll come in, set an elbow and an extension piece, and that'll bring the water level up and over almost to about, probably about there in the actual barrel. So the siphon will be down there, and the emergency overflow will sit at about this mark inside that barrel. Then on the outside of the barrel, elbow, and we'll go on down to the plumbing will come on down and fit just above the actual sump. So if any case I have an emergency situation where the water's filling up faster than what the siphon discharge can occur, then it will overflow down to the sump. And that's basically just a S-shaped version of what I had inside that bucket, which was that coming out the bottom. If you're going to choose some sort of a drum, make sure you consider that it's food safe or safe to be used for an aquarium. And I'll often go to my local laundromat and get those big blue 200 litre barrels. I like to use ones that contain either citric acid or hydrogen peroxide. Those are both easily washed out with water. Don't get the ones that are containing bleaches and soaps. What I want you to have a look at is two things. Number one, I've cut the bottom of this pipe at an angle, and the reason for that is if you had it straight across, and you know what it's like when you have a bulkhead in an overflow, and it just sucks and gets bubbles and bubbles and bubbles and bubbles and bubbles and makes a horrible slurping noise. By cutting an angle on there, it increases the surface area for the air to actually enter to break the siphon, so you don't get the prolonged, drawn out slurping noise. And the other thing is I've actually brought this siphon brake airline down to the same level as the actual cut. Just zip tied on the outside, and that's going to get bent over and attached into this nipple fitting just there. Obviously I wanted to have this piece of pipe go all the way down the bottom of the drum. That way it's basically going to suck the entire contents of the drum. If you have it up a little bit, it's always going to leave a certain amount of water in the bottom of the drum. There's our siphon just there, going all the way down to the bottom of the barrel. 45-degree cut on the end. There's our air line going all the way up, which causes a siphon break. It's teed into the actual siphon at the top there, the bend in the elbow. I've just used some 25mm pieces there, a reducing bush, and one of these Teflon nipple adapters. And there is my emergency overflow standpipe. Like I mentioned before, you can come from the bottom of the drum, but my plumbing has to go sideways a little bit. So I've gone through the side of the barrel, and I've made it so that the actual water level in an emergency can only go up to about probably 2 inches or 3 inches. That's 75mm from the top of the actual barrel. And then it just comes out through this bulkhead and will come out down and drop into what will be back down there, the sump. I almost forgot one really important thing, and that is just to pop a little breather hole in the lid. This lid actually goes down pretty firm on top of the barrel, along with this kind of a gasket like that. And if you don't have some sort of a breather hole, the actual barrel will actually cave inwards under the suction. So here's the barrel up in the rafters. There's the water supply line in through the lid so it cannot come loose. And I've just done the output line coming down the actual shed as I come down this ladder, and I fixed it there on the side of the tank. So I'm gonna let that cure overnight, the PVC pipe cement, and then we'll fire the bad baby up and we'll see exactly what kind of surge a Carlson Surge Device delivers. By the way, I'm also loving these PVC pipe clips. These are the standoff ones. Obviously in a saltwater environment, a lot of the times we end up with these powder coated metal ones, and trust me, they always rust. The good thing about this is you can play around with the different types of nozzles. You can play around with the depth that you place the elbow below the surface. If you go too deep, you're actually going to provide too much back pressure, and the actual water will prefer to go up and over the emergency overflow. So you can't go too deep in the system. You can see the air being purged out now. Start to see sort of that sort of vortexing of the air. There we go, the air's being swirling around. And the surge still hasn't happened fully. So all those, the about 150, 160 litres of salt water is being surging down into the display tank at the moment. And once we see that last puff of air come out of the system, that means that the surge is finished. The barrel's being refilled, ready for the next cycle. So that's going up. You can see how there's actually less movement on the surface at the moment. That's simply because the actual water height of the tank is increasing. So there's a little bit less surface disturbance. Now the air's being vacated. I love it. But for those that doubt that this is actually an intense form of water flow, check this out. So if you doubt how much water's coming out of there, look at that. So that is a crazy amount of water that's going into this display. An absolute crazy amount of water. So sometimes in these large displays, it's not always so. There we go, and it's done. But I thought it'd be a good opportunity to go through what I think are the pros of using a Carlson Surge Device, the cons of using a Carlson Surge Device, and who I think would be the best hobbyist to have a think about using this method of water flow in the aquarium. So the pros to me are really, really obvious, and they are a number which completely outweigh the cons in my situation. Number one pro would be the insane amount of forceful flow that you get coming from that Carlson Surge Device. A flow which I don't think you can get from many of today's hobbyist wave makers, particularly in a tank of this size. With that flow does come a certain degree of bubbles, as you can see, but that's really natural. So check out this footage of me going out in the local coastline of New South Wales collecting some macroalgae. And the flow in this situation is insane. The amount of surge pushing me back as I'm diving down to try and collect some algae, some macroalgae, in this case it's Caulerpa filiformis, is so insane I've got to hold onto a rock. And this was a day which I was actually thinking would be a day suitable for going and doing that collecting activity. Obviously I wasn't going to go out on a rough day. So on this calm day, you've got this kind of surge. And I believe that this kind of surge is critically important for certain livestock with which to keep in our aquariums. So there are certain fish which you will read which need to have clean, vigorous, highly oxygenated seawater, such as the clown tank, which is one which I have in this tank here. Another surgeonfish which you may read and have reports just like that would be the Achilles tank, one which lives in this fast, high surging environment with lots of micro bubbles, lots of wave action, needing highly oxygenated water. There are also corals, obviously, which grow in the intertidal areas and need that kind of dumping wave action that comes through, such as the Acropora strawberry shortcake. And that highly oxygenated, vigorous water movement helps to strip out all the mucus, the slime, the CO2 that comes from respiration and just biological activity in those corals. So not to mention bringing food substances to the corals themselves. So it's actually really, really beneficial for many types of life which we wish to keep in our reef tanks. The cons, well, the cons to some people would be the fact that you've got a lot of bubbles coming with the Carlson Surge Device. Now you minimise the amount of bubbles that come with the Carlson Surge Device through actually providing that slanting cut to the bottom of the siphon tube and also the airline, the siphon brake. But you do, regardless, get a degree of micro bubbles that occur at the start, obviously a lot of micro bubbles that occur at the start, and at the end you get a small amount of micro bubbles as that siphon breaks. To me, I like that. It provides a natural occurrence in the aquarium. And as long as you don't actually cycle the surges too close together, the aquarium has time to clear of its micro bubbles and you get some nice viewing of the actual inhabitants before the surge starts again. Obviously, if you've got micro bubbles constantly, the surge might be too close together and the aquarium doesn't have a chance to clear. But with that micro bubbles does come, I guess, one negative, which is salt spray. You are going to get salt spray in the aquarium. The other negative would be that you need to have enough capacity in the actual aquarium to contain the additional water which is being added to the display. And as that added water drains back to the sump, you need to have enough capacity in your sump to actually hold the additional water also until it's been pumped all the way up to the actual barrel and the surge device itself. So there's a couple of limitations to you. Obviously having lids on the aquarium would help to keep that salt spray down, but of course then you may have the problem of having to keep your lids clean of salt spray and condensation on the underside and keeping the lighting maximum for the actual aquarium. Who do I think would benefit most from using a Carlson Surge Device? Well, for number one, me and anyone like me, anyone who's got large display aquariums that wants a really natural effect in that aquarium and is struggling to get enough water movement is perfect for a Carlson Surge Device. Anyone who's got displays where they have adequate space around them to actually hold barrels or buckets up above the aquarium, perfect for a Carlson Surge Device. I think the absolute brilliant location for a Carlson Surge Device, or brilliant use for a Carlson Surge Device, would be in a coral farming situation or a fragging situation where you have those shallow long style raceways, because you can just imagine in a shallower volume of water, that discharging surge pushes the water all the way along and down. I'm finding this is the first time I've used one on a deeper style tank, and I'm just playing around with the different nozzles to try and get a bit more of a water movement through the body of the water itself. But in a shallow coral fragging style tank, the amount of flow that it will get through there will be insane. In fact, you probably have to play with how you place and anchor the coral so they're not getting blown over. Those that are actually farming certain high energy style corals such as Acropora humilis, Acropora gemifera, Nasuta, and obviously strawberry shortcakes would actually, I think, highly benefit from having this style of water movement in your aquarium. Now you may be wondering, but what about your automatic top off, your freshwater top off? Isn't that going to mess up with the ability to top up fresh water with all this changing of water level in the return chamber of your sump? I can hear the bubbles going on pretty soon up there. The discharge is going to happen pretty quickly. I'll turn the camera around and show you my return chamber. So this is my very messy return chamber of my sump at the moment. There's that last baffle and the water's just trickling over down there. There's my return pump. And there's my automatic float valve, which is currently, my freshwater float valve, which is currently down, which tells me that I need to go and fill up my freshwater reservoir. But at the moment, you can see that the actual, the discharge is about to occur, and the return chamber is at its lowest, which means that should I have fresh water in my reservoir, that will be sitting right like that. Okay, now pretty soon the discharge is going to occur. And what we're going to notice is a lot more water coming down through the return line and a lot more water spilling over this baffle. As that happens, of course, this return chamber of the sump is going to fill up. And the water level is going to get higher than the actual float valve itself. And that's fine. So right now the sump is at its highest. The water level in the sump is at its highest, and you can see the actual float valve from the automatic reservoir is completely submerged. The actual discharge has finished. You might be able to hear the barrel up the top there filling up with water, which is continually happening. Air's being pushed out of the emergency overflow there. And the water level in the sump is decreasing. So you can see now the sump's at its absolute lowest water level. The actual float valve is actually just about to hang in the air, and the barrel is at its fullest, and the discharge has begun. So that's the actual cycle. All it means is that the freshwater top off can only happen when the barrel of the Carlson Surge device up there is at its fullest and just before a surge cycle is going to begin. That's when your freshwater top off will occur. During the discharge, of course, your float valve will be, or your automatic float switch, will be underwater and therefore will not be able to work. It will just simply be functional when the sump level has dropped to a point where it can actually then introduce fresh water. Thanks very much for watching this video on the Carlson Surge device. I did find it a little bit tricky to make it both educational and inspirational. So if you do have questions for me regarding how to construct it, how to use it, how to fine tune it, just pop them down the comments down below, because I really want to make sure that if you do have a crack at using this style of good old school technology, that you're successful. Don't forget to check out the book called The Reef Aquarium Volume 3 by Julian Sprung and Charles Delbeek. It's got a really great section in the water movement chapter on Carlson Surge devices, as well as dump buckets and other types of surge type devices. If you are new to this channel and you are wondering a bit more about what's going on with this build, then I think this video up here would be the best one to get you up to speed very, very quickly, being fast forward and all. For now, I'm off to go and top up my freshwater reservoir and hook up number 2 Carlson Surge Device. I'm going to make this end of the tank here quite the wave front coming through and hitting this island. I think the other one will be more of a peaceful lagoon style. I'll see you next time on the Australian Aquarist.